now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. Maybe be seated. Thank you. The first item on the order paper is questions addressed to the Deputy President. Members may press the talk button on their desks if they wish to ask a supplementary question. I wish to remind honorable members that the names of members requesting supplementary question will be cleared as soon as the Deputy President starts answering the fourth supplementary question. The first question has been asked by Honorable T. Makondo. The Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, for the opportunity accorded to me. Honorable members, let us agree that social cohesion is the capacity of our society to ensure the well-being of all our people in a manner that minimizes socio-economic disparities, thereby avoiding polarization of our society. The reality of our country that all of us cannot ignore is that we are a plural society with notable racial, religious, ethnic, and cultural diversity. The critical point is how we manage such diversity in a manner that supports our collective and our mutual development. A cohesive society must be able to balance such contradiction in a mutually reinforcing manner and work towards reducing, if not eliminating, all the inequalities in our society. Once these inequalities are deep, they can lead to serious polarization that can produce social instability. Therefore, the question that all of us must ask and interrogate is whether the current social cohesion initiatives that we are engaged in as a country, are they working? Are they producing the desired results? I hold a different view that the mere hosting of events that are narrowly around arts, sports, cultural heritage, without substantively interrogating the source of social fragmentation and divisions is not assisting in resolving our challenges. The fundamental question that we must ask is, are we addressing the actual issues that confront our society, or are we glossing over them? For as long as deep inequalities exist, whether as a result of wealth disparities or extreme poverty, joblessness that cause hopelessness, sports and cultural events will not holistically produce a long-lasting solution. Let me reiterate the point that as the ANC government, we are committed to building a country where people will be able to determine their own destinies through exercising their own initiatives and determination to succeed, and not by their race, and certainly not by their gender. We meet in this parliament of our people during the Human Rights Month And in a year that we are celebrating the centenary births of our mother, Albertina Sisulu, and our founding president, Nelson Mandela. One of the enduring legacies of this parliament of our people was the crafting of our constitution, which President signed into law in Sharpeville on the Human Rights Day. Our constitution envisages a democratic state founded on human dignity, the achievement of equality, and the advancement of human rights and freedoms. Born from the evil experience of racial hatred and discrimination, sexism, patriarchy, our Constitution enjoins all of us to give birth to a new society founded on human dignity, non-racialism, and non-sexism. Violence perpetrated against women is an offense against the founding principle of our Constitution. Prejudice and discrimination against women is a violation to our Constitution and all that we seek to build as a nation. A nation that undermines the aspiration of women and oppresses them cannot have peace, no social cohesion, and no development. The neglect and social exclusion of women in our democratic breakthrough will mean a betrayal of our liberation struggle. Our liberation struggle was not just about ending national oppression. It was also about ending the triple oppression of women as mothers, sisters, and daughters. Black women were oppressed on the basis of race, class, and gender. The ANC government remains seized with this historic task of ensuring the full emancipation of women. Patriarchy remains omnipresent in our language, in our day-to-day doings, our idioms, our metaphors, our stories that we tell, and our performances. The liberation of women demands that those who are a source of life, women, are also freed from sexism and oppressive language that is packaged as transcendental truth or ancient wisdom. That is what our time requires. That is what the new revolution of our soul warrants. This is what radical economic emancipation of women demands. 45 years ago, Revolutionary Samora Machel warned that the emancipation of women is not an act of charity or the results of humanitarian or compassionate attitude. The liberation of women is a fundamental necessity for a free and just society. The governing party, the ANC, is fully committed to gender parity and gender equality as a precondition for economic freedom in our lifetime. We understand that women are the soul and fire, not just of the ANC, but of our nation. They remain the bricks and mortar building the dreams of a resilient nation. The 54th National Conference of the ANC once again committed to the 50-50 gender parity representation at local, provincial, and national government. More needs to be done by other political parties. More needs to be done in the private sector to empower women. And more needs to be done to keep girls in our classrooms, in training, in employment, and in enterprise development. Our commitment, therefore, to ensure women's participation in the economy is unequivocal. But these initiatives have no chance of success if these women continue to bear the brunt of gender-based violence, usually at the hands of their intimate partners. Essentially, what I'm saying, programs that seek to build social cohesion must operate from a basis of empowerment that will address gender inequality, bring a sense of security for the vulnerable, and address the wealth gap that is racial in character. Thank you very much.
Honorable Makondo. Thank you, President.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thanks, Deputy President, for the comprehensive answer that you have given. I agree with you that the issues that must dominate the Social Cohesion Forum must be the issues that has divided the nation. Just recently, the Department of Land and Rural Development has released a report. The report that has reflected the ownership of land in terms of women that are at the lowest bar. So I want to ask you, Deputy President, what is it that the government is going to ensure that there is transformation in South Africa, particularly when it comes to women? Thanks.
Deputy President.
Thank you very much. Well, transformation will rest on a cohesive society. A society that will recognize the bonds that keeps it together. And central to the bonds that keeps us together as a nation are those people amongst ourselves who are vulnerable. Those are women, those are children, those are people with disabilities. If within ourselves as society, we don't ensure that those that are vulnerable are made to feel safe and empowered to participate in whatever activity we do as a nation. It is therefore important to look at programs that will empower, firstly, women. And our history tells a story. Like I've said, women were oppressed in many ways. If we don't address that, deliberately empower women to participate freely, I don't think we'll ever reach that desired society, that desired nation. If we don't look up to our girl children, our children, if we don't look after our people living with disabilities, we're a society that is in denial. So as government, we must find programs that deliberately seek to empower and protect those people. Then in that way, we'll be in the right way to building a nation. Thank you.
Honorable Merwe.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker and Deputy President. I think we all agree that the Zuma administration failed us, but in particular it failed women and children. And I say this because there were little political will to fight gender-based violence and very little political will to address gender inequality. So my question simply to you is, your new administration, how will you tackle these issues differently? But also, when will you establish the National Council Against Gender-Based Violence, which President Zuma promised us in 2012, but then was never established? And also, can you honestly tell us that you take women's issues seriously with the appointment of Minister Bathabile Dlamini to lead the Department of Women in the Presidency?
Deputy President.
I'm sure you'll allow me not to answer that question, because the appointment of ministers and my appointment, it's a prerogative of the president. Well, I don't want to sponsor my opinion. What I can say is that I agree with the fact that we have not done enough to deal with women issues. And now that I'm here, it is my turn, together with yourself in this house. We must not fail. It's one thing to criticize and say someone has not done, but this is our collective responsibility because women are being oppressed inside our homes. Women are being brutalized, tortured inside our homes by people who are very close to them. Now, that cannot be solely the responsibility of the state. All of us must really, as a society, if really we want to build a united, a cohesive society, all of us must take heed to that call. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy President. Honorable Stander.
Mr. Mabuza, welcome to your first Q&A session. How this works is that we ask you the questions and you provide the answers.
Yes.
Next time, would you mind reading the question paper so that you can give us the relevant answers? Thank you. Now, what empirical methodology will you use to assess and measure these programs you are speaking of to empower and protect women? How are you going to measure the success? And secondly, if you believe in protecting women, why is Mr. Manana still sitting there after he was convicted by a court of law for assaulting women? Mr. Mabuza, I enjoy my ice cream without waffle, so a short, concise, straightforward answer would be appreciated.
Deputy President.
Thank you very much. I'll try my best to answer your question in a manner that I can, but not dictated to. I'm going to work with all stakeholders. Wait a bit. I'm going to work with all stakeholders that are concerned on women issues. Now, together with those, every sector of our society together put a program that is measurable. I'm going to meet with women associations. I'm going to meet with men because many of these things are happening at the hands of men. I'm going to meet students, girls, boys. We are going to meet traditional leaders because they still hold certain stereotypes about women. Well, I've been here, I was just appointed yesterday, so stay patient, but within those groupings, we are going to ensure that we set a program that is measurable to ourselves and will assess our progress. With regards to Manana, I think Manana has been convicted, he went to court, and we believe that people can be corrected. We don't have a dustbin where we throw people. We correct people, we move with them. That's what we believe.
Order, honorable members. Let the Deputy President answer.
But the facts that are before me indicates that women are sexually abused, they are raped. The statistics in your country shows that is the biggest problem we are facing. Women are not allowed to express their views, depending on where they come from traditionally. Those are issues that we must approach because people believe in those things. But we must convince them that women are just like us, they're people. Thank you very much.
Honorable Filtani.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Deputy President, we hope that you will do justice to our questions. Appreciate the fact that it's the first time. But here is my follow-up question on the matter at hand. Let's be practical and be less theoretical. You have told us to what extent the ANC government has failed to uphold the rights of women in the country. Now, government is not doing enough to advance the economic cause of women. That is a fact, through land and other assets. You can also take a good look at the budget of the Department of Women, next to zero. Secondly, the 30% that is supposed of tenders, that is supposed of government spend, that's supposed to be spent on women,
Honorable
that
member,
is not happening.
ask your question. In fact, your time has expired.
My question is, what in your term are you going to do drastically to make sure that the position changes, given that the APPs are up
Honorable
for
member, your
consideration
time is
now?
expired.
Well, I think I've answered that question. It's not different from the question that I was asked to say, what are we going to do to emancipate women? So the long and short of my answer was trying to answer that. So you're repeating the same question.
Honorable members, the next question has been asked by Honorable Steenhuisen. Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you very much. Like I've said, Honorable Deputy Speaker, that we're meeting in this Parliament of our people during this Human Rights Month. One of the enduring legacies of this Parliament that we must never forget was the adoption of a constitution. In adopting the constitution, we said we want to heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. We entered into a covenant with the nation that through this constitution, we will lay the foundation for a democratic and open society in which government will be based on the will of the people and every citizen is equally protected by the law. The Constitution remains our moral compass and a lodestar in a society in which all should work, improve the quality of life of all citizens, in which we all feel free and release our potential as individuals to contribute positively to our country. Moral generation is a fundamental pillar of building a cohesive and a caring society founded on ethical values, and a foundation on which the society that we envisioned should be built on. When in government, we speak of building a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous South Africa, an objective reality we have to contend with is how do we build such a society from a very polarized past that has shaped our history. It was under the sterling leadership of the former President Nelson Mandela that we agreed our country needed an RDP of the soul. We are a society in pain due to the years of oppression, marginalization, and deprivation of civil and political rights. We had no common nationhood, and the black majority of our country were treated as subhuman. In many respects, the soul of our nation remained broken along two parallels, that of the ruler and that of the subject. The heavy-handedness of security forces against our people and the accompanying high levels of violent crimes experienced in our society pointed to a spiritual malady of a nation seeking its renewal, its rebirth, its renaissance, and its nation building. Former President Mandela said, "From our national spiritual sickness, it will emerge the problems of greed, of cruelty, of personal and family failures. This," he said, "will help fuel the problems of crime and even corruption, and it will hinder our efforts to move forward at the required pace." At the Moral Regeneration Summit in 1998, former President Mandela pointed out to the symptoms of a spiritual malaise. Among others, these included corruption in both public and private sector, where office and positions of responsibility are treated as opportunities for self-enrichment. The corruption that occurs within our justice system, violence in interpersonal relations and families, in particular the shameful record of abuse of women and children, and the extent of tax evasion and refusal to pay for services that are rendered to us. From the onset, faith-based organizations, traditional leaders, and the public broadcaster were the critical partners of the moral regeneration. In 2008, South Africa's Moral Regeneration Movement Charter of Positive Values was presented to the retired president. It was meant to be a cornerstone of ethics and a moral compass for our nation. The charter was indeed to steer our nation towards the values of Ubuntu. These were values derived from our Constitution, the respect of human rights, respect for others and their dignity, and upholding equality. In the year of Nelson Mandela, we must be brutally honest and admit that the objectives of our moral regeneration movement have not produced the new citizen, the new nation that we envisaged in our Constitution. The levels of violent crimes remain unacceptably high. Girl children in particular and women in general remain victims of abuse at the hands of men that are supposed to treat them as fellow human beings and also provide care for them. They are physically and emotionally abused, raped, and murdered. The fundamental human rights of those in vulnerable groups, including our people living with disabilities, those with mental illness, people living with albinism, in our communities, their rights are violated every day. Many of our churches are losing their moral standing in society. They are seen as places that financially exploit the poor, places that protect evil deeds of sexual abuse of young women and young men. We look at the media, especially the public broadcaster, as partners to conscientize our society and expose this malice. Perhaps not just to expose these social ills in society, but to allow society to dialogue about how to end these inhuman practices. Any attack on the dignity of any person in our society is a violation of our Constitution. Our justice system must bite, even though laws and their enforcement alone will not heal and transform our nation. People need to have confidence in the justice system that it will ensure justice for both the victim and the perpetrator. Honorable members, the Moral Regeneration campaign remains a critical pillar for our collective future. Our renewed energy and focus on moral regeneration work will be anchored on a broad-based and inclusive approach that will allow all key sectors across our social spectrum to make positive contribution. Among others, these sectors include our religious formations, our traditional leaders, women's organizations, men's organizations, youth formation, people living with disabilities, political and cultural formation, the private sector, and all other interested civil society formation. We've begun with the consultation to finalize a clear program, a detailed engagement with specific sectors that we've already identified. In the coming weeks, we'll be meeting with these relevant sectors to assess progress made to date, identify challenges and gaps in areas of improvement, and ensure that a new and a more inclusive program of action is developed and adopted by all of us to guide our work going forward. As Deputy President of the country, one of my responsibilities is to provide leadership on these critical issues confronting our nation, and to reverse what Nelson Mandela, our former president, characterized as a moral malaise of our nation. As leaders, we must collectively seize this moment, the moment presented to us by this positive mood that is prevailing across our country, and lead the process of building on what unites us as a nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Steenhuisen.
Deputy Speaker, thank you very much, and may I extend to the Right Honourable the Deputy President congratulations on his appointment as leader, and I look forward to the engagements as we hold you and the executive accountable. Thank you very much for your answer, Deputy President. You'd be aware of the morally repugnant scourge of political assassinations, of political office bearers particularly, which have bedeviled our political landscape and are indeed a violent crime and a spiritual sickness, as you refer to. How will you use your position, Deputy President, and your role as the champion of the moral regeneration movement to introduce initiatives to uncover what is behind the scourge of political assassinations, introduce moral regeneration initiatives to bring it to an end, and in particular, Mr. Deputy President, to uncover exactly who was behind the political assassination of Mr. Caswell Maluleke, Mayor of Bushbuck Ridge, in Mpumalanga, Mr. Jimmy Moshlala, Mbombela Speaker, in Mpumalanga, Mr. John Ndlovu, Eshlanzeni Chief Whip, in Mpumalanga.
Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Deputy President, one moment, please. Yes, Honorable Member.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. In terms of Rule 92, point of order, but Rule 142, 6 and 7, it provides that the follow-up question must be related to the original question. 1. 2, on a different note, this is out of order still in that if the honorable member wants to cast improper motives on the honorable Deputy President, he must then do so in the form of a substantive motion. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I ask for your determination for your ruling in this regard. Thank you.
All right. The first part of your question, I think the President will answer that. The second part, that's speculation, I think. Go ahead, Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'll seek to answer both questions. Well, the task that is facing all of us is to uphold our Constitution. No one is above that Constitution. for those of us who hold certain opinions, who hold certain views, who are holding certain allegations, we know what is the right thing to do. The onus is on us. We have created the necessary institution in this democratic environment so that anything that seeks to violate our constitution can be reported to those institutions. I think honorable members must do the right thing. Otherwise, we must avoid a situation where we go around casting aspersions against people without any due process. This, I take it, is just a process to harm their names and their character. But I take it, the law enforcement agencies in our country must do their work without our hindrance, without our fiddling. Any matter that is in the hands of the police, all I can do as a citizen is to help the police conclude or find a criminal. The police alone cannot really achieve anything in their function to deter, to fight crime, if as members of our communities, we don't cooperate with them. So if members here have any information about all the killings, the political killings everywhere, please confront the law enforcement agencies and report. Or if you know, go to the nearest police station and lay a charge. You normally do that yourself. You have laid so many charges. Now, it's one thing to go parallel to the law and cast aspersions and not report anything or lay a charge. You are allowed. You are allowed as an individual to lay a charge, but laying a charge means you must substantiate. It's easy to cast aspersions. It's not easy to substantiate on your allegation. Thank you very much.
Honorable Hlengwa.
Deputy Speaker,
Yes, Honorable.
the Honourable Deputy President answered the second part of the question, if you can call it an answer. The first part was what initiatives the Moral Regeneration Committee was going to put in place to deal with the scourge of political killings in South Africa.
Honorable Deputy
Point
President.
of order, Deputy
Well,
Speaker.
Can we
Point
allow
of
the Deputy
order.
President to respond, please?
Order,
Please. Please.
I've explained that the initiatives that we are currently doing, we have set in motion a process of setting engagement with all the sectors that I've listed. And in those engagements, we are seeking to isolate and prioritize issues that are a problem in our society. And if that is going to be raised, prioritized in our program, we will. But there are certain issues that that are not in our jurisdiction, because we are going to dialogue. But there are institutions that are created. All what we need to do as this moral regeneration movement is to work with the law enforcement agencies, help them to do their work. That I've explained, that we'll be adopting a program that will be known to this country, and all the actors will be known to yourself. And you're also invited to join, because you are part of this country. Thank you very much.
Honorable Hlengwa. Thank you, Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable House Deputy Speaker. Honorable Deputy President.
Kufanele uchaze phela ukuthi awuyena uhlengwa usukuma ngaliphi igama. Ngoba manje
Kwenza-
amagama abhaliwe la likahlengwa leli umkhuleko.
Kwenzeke iphutha Sekela Somlomo.
Oh,
Kufanele
uboqala lapho sikhulu sami ngiyojabula mawuqala lapho ya.
Ndiyabulela.
Ngiyabulela.
Yeah. Honorable Deputy President, you correctly state that moral regeneration is a pillar of our future. And few years back, the ANC's aligned COSAS instructed learners across schools that if teachers beat them, they must beat the teachers back. And these days, we see a lot of these activities happening in our schools. And my question is, what message can you give to COSAS? And what will you be doing to change the situation around? Because teachers today are continuing in beating children, and children are beating teachers back. It's a whole mess in our schooling system. Thank you.
Well, one thing we must recognize is that this is a situation that has been designed by our past, where we come from. But we can't always point at that past. As people living in the present, we need to find solutions of these problems that we inherited from the past. Now, the situation in our schools, probably our involvement will be in trying to find a lasting solution, building bridges and relations between our teachers, our parents, and our learners. Because a school is a school because of the three parties. Now, a situation happened where the discipline within our schools broke down. And it broke down because learners were resisting a system. And parents were cooperating with that system. And learners had to refuse. Now, that's where learners and the parents went different ways. Now, teachers were spectators in the middle. They could not come in and say to learners, the use of Afrikaans is wrong. You can't impose Afrikaans. Learners had to take it upon themselves to go to the streets against the will of the teachers, against the will of the parents. Now we must go back and say, you are learners, these are your teachers, these are your parents. Find the way of cooperating. And learners must now, in a free South Africa, must make time to learn, must focus on their learning. Our teachers must focus on their teaching. It's not only the learners that are on the wrong. You will agree with me that in a number of instances, there are news that teachers are having affairs with young girls, which now children, when they're at school, they are in the hands of, learners, when they're at school, they are in the hands of teachers, which should replace a parent. Now, if this parent seeks to have a relationship with this child, now where's the authority there? Now, you can blame causes, but I'm saying the problem cuts across. As much as we're going to speak to causes, we must speak to our teachers because they are not also standing upright. We must also speak to our parents to take their rightful role and ensure that their children go to school and learn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. Honorable Tlawam, is Honorable Tlawam here? Yes. Go ahead, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Congratulations to the Deputy President. Honorable Deputy President, it's unfortunate that you are not a good example of a moral leadership. you lack credibility. I want to know if yourself, you have been rehabilitated since you were part of the Premier League, the rot of the past Zuma administration. How are you going to champion moral regeneration?
Honorable Chauke.
The honorable member is casting aspersion to the Deputy President. And the fact is that we cannot be standing contesting on the rules all the time. The Deputy Speaker, please, if someone is out of order, call him out of order.
Honorable Chauke, you raise your point of order properly. Don't throw stones at me in addition to what you are raising, right? You are out of order. Honorable Tlowama, when you expect the Deputy President will respond to you if he wishes to. But when you raise your question the way you do, you are inviting me as a presiding officer and whips into your question and thus create a problem. You can do better than that.
Honorable DP, you want me to rephrase my question?
And be in order. You don't have to revise it, just be in order.
Okay.
And withdraw the sort of aspersions you throw at a member of the House without having raised anything substantially as part of your story here in the House.
Just keep quiet.
Honorable members, allow the member to speak for himself.
Please.
I don't want your assistance. No, I don't want your assistance, members. Please. No.
This is a low quality of members.
No.
Honorable DP, just be specific to me what to withdraw. Just be specific.
Honorable member, when you say you are not an example of what you are saying, that's casting aspersion on the member.
What do you mean?
So you withdraw that.
No, it's not. I'm not casting an aspersion. It's true.
Honorable member, you are worse. You are worse than I thought. You withdraw that remark, ask your question, or sit down.
Deputy Speaker, I don't know between you and me who's worse because I don't understand what you mean I'm worse. It's
Honorable
part
member,
of the rules.
You have a right to make any remarks as long as they are in order.
Yeah, but
if you choose to run...
I asked you, be specific.
I told you.
What? Because it's true what I'm saying. He can't lead moral regeneration. He even failed in Mpumalanga as a premier.
Honorable member.
In 2017,
Honorable
Auditor
member.
General.
Honorable Tlowama, you are supposed to bring any such statements in the House in a proper manner. And that's not a proper manner.
Yeah,
because you have not done so.
Just keep quiet.
And you are not going to do so in the next minutes. I ask you to withdraw that inference.
No, I say, I understand what you are saying, but you agree with me, it's true. I'll bring statement. But what I said is true.
Honorable member, please withdraw that. You withdraw what you have just said.
Which one, Deputy
You
Speaker?
withdraw exactly what you have just said. What you are saying is true. You must withdraw that. And if you don't want to withdraw, honorable member, we've got business of the House here.
Yeah.
There's good fresh air outside.
Deputy Speaker, if there's good fresh air, you can go with me. But what I wanted to know.
Honorable member, withdraw please, unconditionally.
Do you want me to withdraw the truth?
Honorable member, withdraw or leave the House.
I'm going to leave this House.
Leave the House.
This is the truth.
Honorable member, just leave the House. Honorable Misha. Honorable Misha. Go ahead, Honorable Misha, it's your turn.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. According to the Moral Regeneration Movement's website, the origins of the MRM dates back to 1997, meeting between former President Nelson Mandela, key South African faith-based organization leaders, and others to discuss spiritual transformation. President Mandela highlighted the role of religion in nation building and social transformation, and the need for them to work with the state to overcome the spiritual malaise underpinning problems with crime. Does the Deputy President and government agree with the original aim of MRM? And if yes, why are biblical values such as respect for God, one's neighbor, and those in authority not taught in schools, particularly in light of recent reports of students attacking teachers in schools, a behavior that the ACDP strongly condemns? Thank you.
Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you very much. I think as government, we really agree and share those aspirations of the entire moral regeneration movement. But because, as I've said, religion was seen as a central pillar in the whole movement, we therefore cannot prescribe, because in terms of our constitution, we are a secular state. We are not going to prescribe the form of religion, but whatever religion is being practiced must conform and must adhere to our constitutional principles. But the very same religion that we know, all of us, that went through, all of us, Christianity, like I've said, it's beginning to lose the very direction that we hope they must show. There are incidences that you know, Honorable Mushe, that now people are made to drink certain things. They say they will heal. People are made to do certain things in churches. That undermines what the religion stands for. And now the church ceases to occupy the leadership role in our moral regeneration. Of course, this is a matter that we should dialogue with the churches, because I've heard a number of churches condemning certain actions, but government must assist. We must assist the church. We must assist all institutions that seek to uphold our values and build a nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy President. Honorable members, attention has been drawn to me that that space, because it was not taken, we will give it to the Honorable Sheikh, who was next on the list.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Deputy President, let me welcome you to your maiden question and answer session. But let me start off by asking Deputy President, I heard us talking about political murders. But what about the political murder of Robert Jean Cora Smith? Robert Smith and his wife Jean Cora Smith, that were brutally murdered, a financial genius in 1977 by the apartheid regime, because he was about to release the information, delicate information of corruption in any event. But coming back to the question here, Deputy President, we all understand and know that the socio-economic conditions under which our people live in today. Now, in your plan of action in wanting to create a better society, together with the religious organizations and other stakeholders, would you ensure that the community themselves have a greater role to play in this?
Honorable Member.
Thank you.
Your time has expired.
Well, thank you. I think I understood the question, that as much as we want to deal with our value system as a nation, as much as we want to deal with our ethics, our principles, at the core of these challenges is the poverty that it's engulfing our people. It's unemployment. You'll understand that part of my role as Deputy President assigned to me is to coordinate all programs that seek to deal with poverty. They call it anti-poverty programs. That means we are going to work together with colleagues in the executive to ensure that in areas where there's poverty, poverty-stricken areas, we design programs to intervene so that we lessen this burden. We'll also design programs by way of my role in leadership, in leading the human resource development strategy, to ensure that more and more of our young people are trained, are given skills so that they can escape from poverty. Their chances of finding employment are increased. So yes, part of the social ills that we see today are caused by problems of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Yes.
The next question has been asked by Honorable Shivambo, Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you very much. Honorable Member Shivambo, one of the biggest problems, as you know, that is confronting all developing nations of the world today, especially the African continent, is the illicit and illegal movement of money, extraction, and capital flight of our natural resources. If you see today, the question that we're discussing today is topical in Zimbabwe. Correctly define this illicit financial flow should, for us to be characterized as the and neo-colonization of a special type. They constitute organized crime, just as corruption, tax evasion, and racketeering steals from the national fiscus. These are monies that could be better spent on economic infrastructure, education, and social services. It is monies that could be better spent on growth, development, deficit reduction, and the reduction of the indebtedness across the African continent. In the final analysis, this illicit financial flows steals from the people. Accordingly, they should not be treated lightly as misdemeanors. They should be recognized for what they are: organized crime and corruption. They represent a significant opportunity cost on the poor. They create deeper inequality, unemployment, and poverty. We therefore need to respond in equal measure and within the requisite firmness and decisiveness and strong legislative and criminal justice mechanism to root out this crime. A further problem confronting especially the African continent concerns the illegal movement of money or capital from one country to another country. Globally, this phenomenon of illicit financial flows manifests itself in various ways, including, among others, the import and export trade, misinvoicing to evade custom duties, evasion of VAT or income taxes, using trade-based money laundering techniques by mixing money from legal sales with money from proceeds of crime such as drug sales, using offshore shell companies to transfer money from one country to another, as well as illegal cross-border transfer of goods to evade customs and taxes. The report of the AU's high-level panel on illicit flows that was led by former President Mbeki gives an indication of how Africa's development is negatively constrained by illicit financial flows of resources. So resources that are meant for our development are diverted inappropriately. There seems to be consensus that we need to improve and sustain cooperation among countries to tackle this problem of illicit financial flows. As South Africa will continue to cooperate with the rest of the continent and the world to stem this tide. More specifically, it is critical to strengthen the capacity of our institutions to institute measures and strict controls that enable us to detect and prevent illicit financial flows and profit shifting. There has been to be seamless coordination between our Reserve Bank, our SARS, the Financial Intelligence Center, and all our law enforcement agencies. Consequently, the South African government has implemented a number of interventions to enable the fight against illicit financial flows. The Reserve Bank monitors outflows and inflows through administration of exchange control in terms of a delegation from the minister. To the extent that the Reserve Bank and our Financial Intelligence Center identifies any criminal violation, they report such activities to our prosecuting authorities over and above what they do themselves. The Reserve Bank and SARS work closely together to monitor the movement of money. Application for cross-border transactions often require tax clearance by SARS to ensure that tax risks are being reduced. Ongoing interaction between the two means that attempts to move capital offshore for tax reasons are reduced. Yes, much more still needs to be done in this respect. However, we are yet to see the attendant criminal justice responses and consequences to curb this crime. The poor expect us to act and intervene on their behalf. They expect us that we should treat crimes of greed with the same vigor that we treat any petty crime. For our party's government, we have generated the consensus and sustained cooperation necessary to tackle the problem at a multinational level. For your part, as this legislature, you must engage whether you should not initiate necessary legislation to try and fill in the gaps that might be there. Here at home, we are strengthening our institutional capacity to monitor, detect, and prevent profit sharing. The Reserve Bank, SARS, Financial Intelligence Center, and all other law enforcement agencies are working seamlessly together. But this does not mean there are no gaps in between, which still allows money to leave our country. Probably the day we'll see some arrest, our public will be confident that the law is taking its course. Something is being done, people have been arrested. Our people need to see our prosecuting authority acting, and they want to see the administration of justice. They want to see monies being recovered, those that were illegally taken out of our country. They want to see goods being stopped at our borders, goods that are illegally taken out of our country. Thank you very much.
Honorable, thank you, Honorable. That question, Honorable Shivambo.
No, thank you, Deputy President. I don't know which institutions are you talking about, because in our official interaction with the South African Reserve Bank and the Financial Intelligence Center and SARS, they pointed that they are not doing anything about tax-based erosion. And you are saying that they're working seamlessly. Tax-based erosion is where profits are shifted and there is no adequate legislation in South Africa to deal with that. So I don't know what you're talking about when you say they're working seamlessly. What is the working seamlessly? What are they doing exactly to deal with this phenomenon? Because in their individual separate responses, SARS says that we do not have the legislative instruments to deal with this problem. The president of the ANC, when he responded, he said that tax avoidance is not a crime in South Africa. The Reserve Bank says the same thing, that we do not have the muscle to deal with these issues. So I don't understand what you're talking about when you say that all these institutions are working seamlessly to deal with it, and there's going to be arrests that can be effected according to which law in terms of what is required. I think that is one thing that you might need to clarify, because your response can't be a reflection of reality.
Thank you very much. You'll understand that SARS, the duty of SARS is that all companies that are doing business in this country, whether foreign or domestic, they need to be cleared by SARS for them to continue to do business in a form of a tax clearance, that this company has paid all its taxes, therefore it can be allowed to trade. If you have not satisfied your tax issues, you will never be issued a tax clearance. Now, we are talking about the movement of money out of this country. That means we've got companies that have got a footprint in South Africa that are foreign. They're doing business here. Now, monies that they acquire here will eventually land in their countries of origin. Now, SARS need to determine the money that must remain in this country and the money that is legitimately theirs. Because we're not saying, there's no law that says no money must leave this country. But money, if you have made so much, you must pay tax. So SARS cannot stand back and say, we are not involved in this movement of money. The Reserve Bank is also, can't distance itself, because in terms of the number of goods, when we call it imports and exports, the number of goods that come into the country and leave the country, they must be recorded. They must be recorded, and some of the goods are not recorded. And those goods are monies that must be recorded. So that means money is moving parallel to the system that we've created. If we continue make noise about our borders to say they are porous, that means there are movements. There are movement of goods in and out that seeks to avoid the institutions that we've created. So all this, the Financial Intelligence Center, which is central, working together with these institutions, must establish, must monitor the movement of money. And it has happened. If you can dig deeper, there are companies that their monies have been withheld because they were evading. They had to be forced to pay tax. The same situation that is currently happening today in Zimbabwe. These companies, they've left with the money, and they are forced now to bring back the money into Zimbabwe. So the president announced that he will establish a commission on tax administration matters. That commission obviously will work with SARS, obviously will work with Treasury, obviously will work with the Reserve Bank, will work with even law enforcement agencies on all tax matters, evasions, movement of money. That commission will lay its hand there. Thank you.
Honorable McPherson.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy President, do you believe in the nationalisation of the South African Reserve Bank, given the ANC's resolution to do so at its last Congress? And if so, how would this fight illicit financial flows and cement investor confidence alongside expropriation without compensation?
Deputy President.
I just think this is a new question. I've got that feeling. I've got that feeling that this is a new question. It's about the privatization of the Reserve Bank, but we're talking about illicit financial flows.
Deputy Speaker.
I just have that feeling.
Yes.
Deputy Speaker, with respect, the Honourable Deputy President, in his very lengthy response, went into great detail about the mandate of the Reserve Bank. The follow-up question is germane to the oral follow-up that the Honourable Member has given, and he must answer it. Otherwise, we're reducing this to a joke. This is what accountability is. And just because Mr. Ibrahim hasn't written an answer for him, it doesn't mean that he shouldn't answer the question.
Honorable Steenhuisen, the Deputy President expressed a feeling. And even before he concluded that, you were already on your feet, talking and giving conclusions and deciding what he should do. So the Deputy President will respond if he feels so. Yes, that's my view. That's my view.
Honorable Member, the privatization of the Reserve Bank is not the question that I'm here for. So if you want me to probably answer that question, I can do so outside this question and answer session, but it is not the question now.
Deputy Speaker, on a point of order.
Yes.
My question to the Deputy President specifically asks, how will the nationalisation...
Honourable Member.
No, please let me finish, Deputy Speaker. How will the nationalisation of the Reserve Bank help fight illicit financial flows? That is a very direct and purposeful question related to the original question. The Deputy President must be able to answer that. It's a simple question. If he can't answer that, what can he answer?
Point of order.
Honorable Chauke, what are you raising on?
Point of order, Chair. I want to bring your attention to Rule 41.2.6, which deals with totally a new question. The question must arise from the original. Secondly, you have made the ruling, Deputy Speaker, and the Deputy President has responded that he will not be able to deal with this matter now. So the matter falls away.
Honorable Deputy President, please. Any response from you, Honorable Deputy President?
Honorable Deputy Speaker, I've expressed my view. This is a new question, and I'm not going to
Deputy Speaker,
attempt to answer it.
Honorable members.
Deputy Speaker,
the Deputy President.
may I address you on Rule 41?
Honorable Steenhuisen, Honorable Deputy President did say earlier on that he is prepared to respond to the question as posed originally by its original poser differently.
Deputy Speaker, this is an oral question session laid down in terms of the rules.
I know that.
Can you please then make a ruling, not your view, can you make a ruling that this is a new question so we can take you to the Rules Committee and teach you a lesson?
Honorable Chauke, take your seat. Honorable, no, I'm not going to make a ruling.
No.
I will not, precisely because of the way you've done it, I'll use that as the reason why I'm not going to answer you. I'll teach you a lesson, yes.
Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Stangwa.
Deputy Speaker.
Let's proceed.
No. Deputy Speaker.
Can we proceed, please?
Deputy Speaker.
What's your question?
No. The decorum of the House must be maintained and be respected. Honorable Steenhuisen must withdraw what he has just said to you. It's a threat. It cannot be allowed in the House. And especially now that we are in front of us, we have been the Deputy President of the country. Yeah. We must maintain the decorum of the House at all costs.
I agree with you fully. Honorable members, please let's maintain the decorum of the House. Language that is improper will not be used. Honorable member, let's deal with each other properly. Honorable Station, can I implore you that we proceed?
Can I address you in terms of Rule 26 of the National Assembly rules?
Would you like us to proceed, please?
I would like to address you in terms of the rules of the National Assembly, if I may. It's your job to preside.
I've heard you there.
Yeah.
What are
you are
saying,
required, when points of order made, to make a ruling on matters. Are you deferring this ruling, or are you just simply not going to do your job?
Honorable members, I have ruled on this matter, and I told you that I will not answer it. And I'm, as a way...
Speaker, may I refer you to Rule 26.4 of the National Assembly rules?
Okay.
26.4 says that the Speaker must act fairly and impartially, and importantly, please listen, apply the rules with due regard to ensuring the participation of members of all parties in a manner consistent with democracy. Your refusal, and what you've just said now, and the denial of a question which is absolutely germane to the oral follow-up, is an abrogation of your duty, sir. You're failing the House.
All right.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, on a point of order.
Can I? Yes, Honorable Member, yes.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, we are tired of the DA's tantrums. The Deputy President has responded to the question. So, has responded. He said he cannot respond to that question now. So why can't you take that? And it's a new question, what you are asking him.
Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Member, please let me not allow you.
Deputy Speaker.
You have
just for Deputy Speaker, please, if I may address you. The question by the Honourable Shavambu speaks about
Honourable Member, you are explaining.
Honourable Member, the Reserve Bank's ability to fight illicit financial flows. My question to the Deputy President asks, how does a nationalised Reserve Bank fight illicit financial flows? There is no new question in that.
Honourable Member, I hear you clearly, and the Deputy President indicated his response and his approach to responding to your question. He didn't say, the Deputy President did not say he does not understand you. He didn't say that. And he said he feels this is, your question contains in it new things. He would like to respond to it differently elsewhere, and he promised to do that. Now, let me, honorable members, earlier on I pointed, Honorable Mguni correctly pointed out that when questions are posed, the supplementary question must contain one supplementary question. And this one is also the Deputy President's choice. We do have flexibility. The Deputy President, if he wishes to respond to all of them, of course that would be our preference sometimes as well, that he answers as broadly as he possibly can. But the rules that you members of the House have agreed says that a supplementary question, in order to allow the spread and the number of people who must take supplementary question, be confined to one question so that he responds to that. So that's the one part of our response. Secondly, honorable members, I would like us to proceed on the understanding that the Deputy President will respond to the DA question in the manner in which he suggests he will, and that he will be able to provide with the answer that you want. Deputy President?
Deputy Speaker?
The honorable members want to know when. I thought you said outside of here,
this
so
is
you
an
can
oral
write to them.
question session. He's supposed to answer here. Where is he going to give us the answer? In Barney's or outside? This is ridiculous.
Honorable Tangwa,
On a point of order,
I'm moving
honorable-
on now.
Okay.
I'm moving on. Honorable Tangwa, ask your question.
Ngithokoza kakhulu umhlonishwa Sekela Somlomo. Sekela Mongameli. The Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank cites among other things.
Honorable Steenhuisen, you are insulting me. And it's inappropriate that you say this is rubbish proceeding. It's inappropriate, it's out of order. Your frequent doing that is out of order. You are out of order, Honorable Steenhuisen.
Deputy Speaker.
Go ahead, Honorable Tangwa.
Deputy Speaker. Whatever that Honorable Steenhuisen is raising, we heard it ourselves this side. Can you please ask Honorable Chief Whip to withdraw that? It's
I've
unparliamentary
ruled on
again.
this matter, Honorable
Please, it
Chauke.
cannot be.
I've ruled on this matter, Honorable Chauke.
It can be.
Yeah. Honorable Member, go ahead.
Uqale phansi isikhathi ke sekela somlomo. Honorable Deputy President, the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank cites amongst other things that insofar as illicit financial flows are concerned is the fact that the state and institutions do not have the necessary capacity to deal with this and at worst to prosecute. Over the past 6 years, they have referred 151 cases for prosecution and only 5 have actually been taken up. So the question then becomes, what measures and mechanisms must be put in place thoroughly to deal with this matter? And inter alia amongst that, do you believe that the Reserve Bank is fully, adequately capacitated to deal with this? And if not, what interventions and measures must be put in place in order to assist the Reserve Bank to deal with this particular matter? Thank you, Chair. Futhi nimthemba uDP uyakwazi ukusiphendula ningamkhulumela kalona idlozi.
Thank you very much. Well, I've noted and I've said so that there are gaps that needs to be fixed to prevent this movement of money. Now, that can only happen when all these institutions work together to detect those gaps. But this House can rest assured that this problem is going to be attended to by the announcement of the President in his State of the Nation that I'm going to establish a commission on tax administration. Now, probably that commission will touch on all these institutions to say, SARS, what are you doing? Reserve banks, what are you doing? Want to administer tax? The monies that are moving out illegally, these are monies that must be paid. These are taxes that belong to the country. So this commission is going to look at how we administer these taxes. Where is the gap? Where are we losing the money? Now, standing from outside, well, the deputy governor is saying, well, we've identified cases, we've identified people that have defrauded, and there are cases before our prosecuting authority, and prosecution is not happening. But to prosecute, the Reserve Bank must be able to give evidence to say this has happened, and this happened, and those companies have got the right to reply. Well, there is progress. Some cases have been closed. Some cases are still on the road. That also probably could be the space that this commission will have to look. Where can we strengthen so that these companies don't evade, don't run away with murder? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable DG Mahlangu.
Honorable Deputy President, given the fact that illicit financial flows is contravening capital control and regulatory frameworks in our country, what is the Financial Intelligence Center planning to do to address money laundering and combating financing of terrorism in our country? Thank you.
Deputy President.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Member. The Financial Intelligence Center and National Treasury are undertaking a review of a list of scheduled institutions that they must work with to try and strengthen what areas that they feel are weak. But having added that, the President has made the intention clear to say, I'm going to try and assist by appointing additional commissioners to come and assist in that space. It's a space that will continuously seek to improve the current measures to try and improve, because we are living in a world that is in constantly, changing, a world that is constantly advancing in terms of technology. So more improvements will be ongoing, but currently we have to deal what we can, what is within our ability and capacity to deal with as a country. Our capacities as countries differ, and our ability to curb this will always differ depending on what we can do, what is available, what is our ability. But as South Africa, I can assure you that we are better off in terms of all the institutions that were put in place to prevent this problem. With this commission coming into place, I think we're going to come up with new innovations that will seek to improve this regime. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. And the next question is asked by Honorable C.C. September to the Deputy President. Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you. We are stepping off that question.
Yes, sir. Going to question
The
4.
issue and the question asked by the honorable member is based on our human resource development strategy of our country. The issue that needs to be addressed here is the nature of the relationship between our human resource development strategy and our development as a country. For our country to develop, we need a skilled workforce so that as a nation, we are able to raise our competitiveness and are able to respond to the dictates of any modern economy. Therefore, our skills development interventions must respond to what we want to achieve as a nation, we want to achieve in our developmental agenda. Access to higher education has always been an issue for the poor. The fee-free education addresses the barrier that is prohibitive to development of the general poor and their escape from poverty. We have thus introduced a fee-free quality education to ensure that we open the doors for the poor who would ordinarily not have access to higher education. The provision of free higher education is a victory for all the people of our country. It is a victory for the sacrifices of generations of freedom fighters that you can name. It is a victory for our heroic youth struggles. All the 1976 generation, this is their victory. It is a victory for the 1950 Congress movement and the late South African teacher, Eskiam Pahlela, who read the Freedom Charter to the delegates in Kliptown, reading the clause specifically that relates to education, that the doors of learning and culture shall be open to all. It is a victory for our fallen heroes. Our heroes like Hector Peterson and many others. Those are the people who fought for a free just education system. In achieving this generational mission of opening the doors of learning to all our children, of our domestic workers, gardeners, mine workers, teachers, and unemployed, we are day by day realizing the transformational imperative in our constitutional democracy. The preamble of our Constitution also enjoins all of us to recognize the injustice of our past and to honor those who suffered for justice and freedom. And we have no doubt that this House, this People's Parliament, will continue to work in unison to ensure that no one renders meaningless this dream of the millions of our impoverished masses who need education to improve their lives. And let us always be guided by the wise counsel of our founding President Nelson Mandela, who said, "Education is the great engine of personal development. It is through education that the daughter of a peasant can become a doctor, that the son of a mine worker can become the head of a mine, that the child of a farm worker can become a president of a great nation." Honorable members, one of the main pillars of our human resource strategy is the supply of the adequate skills that our country needs, especially scarce skills, through further and higher education and training. Free higher education will ensure that students will now concentrate on their learning. If they focus on their core business of learning, we expect that the overall performance will improve. The unique feature of free higher education is the funding of the total costs. That means your meals, your education, your books, your accommodation, and other needs that our students need. Thus far, the challenge for many students is that they were partially funded. Previously, financial support tended to cover some aspects and not all the needs of our students. Through this free higher education, we expect that the performance of our students will improve. The serious matter of students dropping out will also be reduced. In this way, the development of our human resource will be greatly enhanced. There are many students who enter our TVET colleges, who enter our universities, who have all their life depended on the state social grants. They have been in our township and our rural schools, benefiting from our nutrition programs. Access to education and skills training provides the best prospects for these millions of young people to escape from this cycle of poverty, help their families, and contribute to national development. And these learners should never be left on their own without food, accommodation, books, and transport money when they enter the gates of higher education. We believe the support we are providing as government will go a long way in reducing the risk that young female learners are facing. It should deter them from transactional sex and unprotected sex with abusive elderly men. It should help reduce gender-based violence, unwanted pregnancies, and the spread of HIV and AIDS. It is common knowledge that where the total needs of students are catered for, such students stand a better chance to successfully complete their studies. The South African private sector must also find it necessary to continue to invest in the education system of our country, because an appropriately skilled population is a huge benefit for our economy. Thanks to the progressive policies of this government, day by day education, in health, in housing, we are restoring the dignity of all South Africans. Many of those with no skills are in the forefront, were in the forefront of our struggle, and today they feel like they've been betrayed and forgotten. They cannot take care of themselves and their families. Many did not finish high school, they have never worked, and they live like beggars, stripped of their dignity and identity. This is a very familiar South African story, which must give all of us sleepless nights. We cannot build a nation if more than half of South Africans live in poverty, hopelessness, and without dignity. Our social compact between government, business, and labor must speedily reduce the number of young people not in employment, not in education, not in training. In leading the Human Resource Development Council, working together with the Minister of Higher Education, I will be championing the cause of these young people who have given up on looking for employment, who have given up in life. Oliver Tambo once said that a country that disregards its young people does not deserve a future. It is also concerning that our interventions have not had the impact in reducing the number of women not in employment, not in education, not in training. We must not only grow our economy to absorb young people into employment, equally, we must also skill them appropriately for both low skills, labor-intensive jobs, as well as high-skilled jobs needed for a modern, diversified economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. Honorable September.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, Deputy President. Indeed, education is not a static commodity to be considered in isolation from its greater context, and therefore progressively realizing access to education through the fee-free provision must be seen as a positive contribution. Deputy Speaker, an effective anti-poverty strategy should incorporate enhancement of education and skills, especially for women and the poor. Deputy President, what strategy does government have to work in a coordinated way to deliver opportunities for human development in order to have a more educated and skilled citizenry so that we reduce disparities in wealth and poverty and improve the country's Gini coefficient? Can government ensure that those in South Africa who have suffered from discrimination in the past are put in front of the queue of national priorities, as done with fee-free education continuously, and as everyone has inherent dignity and it must be respected? Not being able to be given opportunities to develop impairs dignity. I thank you.
Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you very much. I think as government we've done a lot in trying to change the environment. We are happy that our basic education is now yielding the desired results. We have improved the infrastructure in our schools. Children were learning under trees, where we come from. Now children have got schools. Children have got books at school. Children have got transport that takes them to school. Children have got food. That has contributed immensely to try and stabilize the learning environment in our basic education. And that is the base. Whatever you see in universities comes from those primary schools, comes from those secondary schools. We are still working hard to try and eliminate all these farm schools, which they don't deserve to be called schools. And I'm sure the progress that we're making is starting to yield results. You can see about the number of learners that are going through the system. The number is increasing day by day, year by year, and we're seeing more and more bachelor's passes. We're seeing more and more diploma passes. That should be a good sign. This government has also tried to widen and broaden higher education. The introduction of TVET colleges, expanding training, it's a good thing for this country. The expanding access in universities by coming with 2 new universities, which are not enough. We still want this government to build more and more universities, given the fact that there's always a bottleneck when children are supposed to be admitted in universities. Some students are unable to get entrances in universities. That is an indication that we are short of spaces. We are short of universities. As a country, we've done better so far, but more and more still needs to be done in skilling our nation. In skilling our nation, we will be, in a way, improving our economy. There can't be any economic growth without a skilled labor force behind that economy to exploit the resources that are available, that are presented by our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Buzoli.
Mr. Chair, so-called quality free higher education is not of high quality for many, and is also not actually free. Since it was introduced, students have rioted and burnt, complaining about NSFAS inadequacies, terrible or non-existent accommodation. 4 universities were recently closed: Venda, Walter Sisulu, Zululand, and UNISA. UNISA couldn't cope with the large unplanned for crowds of students. Several universities are in severe financial difficulties, and some have lost accreditation for key programs like law. So, your government cannot deliver quality education. And it can only make it free by taking money from basic education, 7 billion, and money from housing, 7 billion, and increasing VAT, all of which are anti-poor measures. How, Mr. Deputy President, without mentioning any cliches,
your time is
how does this really help human development? Thank you.
Well, as a country, our needs will always be more than our resources. But that does not mean we should not move forward. The introduction of free higher education is a right step in the right direction. All of us must galvanize resources to ensure that our children are at school, they acquire a skill. That is a necessary thing to do. I don't think people should complain. They can complain because there are families that are well off, they can send their children. But there are families that are not well off, they're poor. If you're talking about unemployment, poverty, these people, they've got children that can't access education. It is our responsibility to ensure that every child accesses education. And we are going to do that. Now, whether the education system, whatever we give, whatever we produce, you call it quality, it's really depending on the eyes of the behold. But we think our children are really the best. Some countries are taking the skills that we're producing here and use our people to grow their economies. A lot of doctors have left this country. They are working elsewhere. They are best doctors. Now, but we, as South Africans, we condemn our education system and say it's not giving quality. But others, they see it as quality. Maybe we want something that we don't know ourselves. But there is room to improve. All of us, if we feel our education is not good enough, it is upon us to improve it. But so far, what we have is really working for our country, and we are opening more and more opportunities for those that were excluded. Now, that should not be a crisis for those that are already having opportunities. Because for this country to work and to develop and to create the necessary opportunities, job opportunities that we want, we need a skilled nation. Now, we are going to continue, but we are very sure that those who are at the lower rank, those who belong to the poor, those who belong to the working class, are now having an opportunity to access education and break the cycle of poverty. I had the opportunity of going to school. My parents did not have the opportunity of going to school. Today, I'm having the opportunity standing in front of you, talking to you, because my parents saw it fit to take me to school. I've broken away from the cycle of poverty. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Dlamini.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, the question wasn't answered.
No. Honorable, please, you can't all be on your feet, please. Some of you must take your seat, please.
Mr. Deputy
Honorable
Chair.
Deputy President, please take your seat a little bit.
Deputy Speaker, just tell all of them to sit down.
No.
1, 2, 3.
Honorable members, please
Thank
take your
you.
seat. I want to hear.
Deputy
Honorable
Deputy
Dlamini,
President.
Honorable Dlamini, hold your horses. Take
But
it easy.
you are the one who said I must stand.
No.
So that's why I'm saying tell them to sit down. You see,
Asingaqabani ngento
two
engekho.
people have already sat down. Ask
Asingaqabani
this lady to sit down
Awume
as well.
kancane, awume kancane please. Awulalele usihlalo
Ngikulalele,
mayikhuluma
wena
nawe.
usukume.
Awulalele usihlalo, ngeke ube wrong awulalele usihlalo. Awuhlale phansi kancane.
Khuluma ke sihlalo.
Awuhlale phansi ke ukuze ngikwazi ukukhuluma kahle. Angikwazi ukubhodla umile. Honorable Bozoli.
Thank you, Deputy Chair.
Yes.
The question was, higher education is not free because it's being paid for out of housing and schooling. But this was not mentioned by the Deputy President at all in his answer.
I have a right to stand, Chair.
All right. Honorable Bozoli, the President responded to that question. So what are you raising on, Honorable Member?
No, I'm raising on the very same point you have just made. You cannot allow a member to raise the second question again. The point that I wanted to make, Chair, is that I respected the fact that the Deputy President was on the floor. That honorable member who raised the question, she said that our education system is rubbish. Now, Chair.
You see, Honorable Chauke, you are now engaging in political discourse of the subject on the floor, and I rule you out of order. Please take your seat. The Deputy President is capable of handling these questions, please, without your assistance. Honorable Deputy President, or you can rise now, Honorable Dlamini.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy President, the study shows that young people who enter grade 1 to grade 12, only half of them, they make it to grade 12. So we're talking about almost 500,000 of young people that disappear in the schooling system. Now, let me tell you what the young people they want. They want free quality education. That's all the young people of South Africa are asking for. Not the stop measures that your government is doing that talks about how much a family earns and all those things. They're not interested in that. They just want free quality education. So when are you as a government going to be decisive and grant young people free quality education as it is outlined clearly in the EFF cardinal pillars? You see, Deputy President, cardinal pillar number 3 of the EFF, it clearly tells you how to implement free quality education. And you are doing very well as an organization, as you have went to study cardinal pillar number 1 of EFF.
Honorable Jamin, your time has expired.
So go and deal with
your time has expired.
Cardinal pillar number 3 of EFF. That
Honorable Member, your time has expired, and I'm switching off the mic now. Go ahead, Honorable President.
Thank you very much. I think as government, the Department of Basic Education, together with the Department of Social Development, we are doing enough to attend to early childhood development. We have provided children that were loitering around at an early age, were not exposed to a schooling environment. We have provided that. And we can give statistics of now children who are now attending early childhood development. That prepares a child for a primary school, for a secondary school. Now, you are saying you are talking about children that are entering your primary level through our ECD centers who are not finishing the race. Now, there are many ills along the way. There are many ills along the way because of the issues that we're talking about. Some children are coming from poverty-stricken families. The only meal they get it from school. When they go back, there's no meal. So there are many elements and factors that can cause a child to drop out. But in the main, those factors revolve around poverty. And all of us, including yourself and myself, we are coming right from that situation. There was a point at a certain stage in your life where you went to school without food. Government is spending a lot of money ensuring that at least a child must have food. So this is the only meal a child will get in between in a day. And that is probably the main reason that keeps the child at school. Doing that, giving our children food, we have to provide facilities. I said so that when I was doing my grade 1, I was attending under a tree. And today I'm fighting very hard to ensure that our children are under a classroom. The kind of education they receive there, it's equally the same as the education a child in an urban area will receive. We're trying to normalize. But you should understand that the journey is too long and very tiresome. We are in the middle of our journey. We are not really scared about those who are trying to disrupt the journey. We will continue with this journey because we know we live with those people. The experience is a day-to-day experience that we must improve the situation. Thank you.
Honorable Kubisa.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Honorable Deputy President, you and I know that the Freudian system of education was meant to ensure that there was no place for a black child in vocational or technical education. But of course, we've seen our fellow Africans, those who come from Mozambique, Congo, and other countries, that they were schooled in vocational education, particularly in engineering, mechanic, plumbing, electricity, etc. Now, do you think that with the provision of free quality education, the country will be able to strengthen the vocational element of our system, that is vocational technical education, with regard to FETs in particular? Thank you very much. TVET colleges.
Deputy President.
Thank you very much. We took a brief discussion with the Minister of Higher Education, and the few engagements that we had, I always insisted on skills training. I insisted on skills training, and I sponsored a view, because the kind of TVET colleges that we have today probably require an entrance. They require a certain minimum level of education that you must have to enter the TVET college. But I said to the minister, there are young people who have never had an opportunity to see the door of a school. What do you do with those young people? You can find a way of giving that young person a skill, like plumbing, like carpentry, that will not require basic education. It will require that this young person is taught how to use his hands, get that skill. And finally, that skill having been imparted, there must be a recognition that I know now how to put a pipe, how to lay a pipe. Because in our case, the general black majority of our people, some of them have never had an opportunity to go to school. Now, we must integrate that kind of community in whatever we're doing as a country going forward. So yes, I'm sure the minister will put more ideas around TVET colleges, and you can see that in the country, TVET colleges are a demand. They're all full. That tells you that there are more and more young people who want to access. They can't access higher education, universities, because of the entrance requirement, but they can access a TVET college. You look at the number of learners that are making it through matric, those that probably can't make it. Now, if you think very well, where do they disappear? They have not passed matric, what happens to them? So we must find a way of tracking them, find them, give them a skill, allow them to contribute in our economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. We now cross over to the question number 5. Honorable, is asked by Honorable Singh, Naren Singh, to the Deputy President.
Thank you very much. Honourable Member Singh, South Africa and the People's Republic of China have established a diplomatic relation as of the 1st January of 1998. South Africa and China have reached a historic milestone as the two countries celebrated the 20th anniversary of the establishment of these diplomatic relations. The diplomatic relations between the two countries have grown significantly over the past 20 years. The nature of the relations has also assumed increased strategic significance, from a partnership in 2000, leading to the establishment of a binational commission in 2001, to a strategic partnership in 2008, and to a comprehensive strategic partnership in 2010. With the signing of the Beijing Declaration, despite all this development, China has never dictated to us as a country as to what we should do or how we should manage our domestic policy regime. When establishing diplomatic relations with China in 1998, South Africa was recognizing the People's Republic of China as a legitimate Chinese government. South Africa recognizes the People's Republic of China as the sole government that represents the whole of China. It is our stated position, both domestically and in multilateral forums, that South Africa identifies Tibet as part of the Republic of China. Accordingly, we subscribe to One China, One Policy. As a sovereign state, none of our international partnerships have an overriding influence over our domestic policy. There is no bilateral or multilateral partnership we've entered into that has dictated the policy agenda that we must pursue as a country. We are a sovereign nation and we will tirelessly guard our sovereignty. Similarly, we are carefully consider diplomatic relations and international relations in determining our visa requirements. However, none of these are influenced solely by protest, manipulation, and popular action. We place a strict separation between visas determined by the Department of Home Affairs and officials and diplomatic visas issued in concurrence with the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. South Africa treats each visa application on its own merits and demerits. We will from time to time accept and reject application in accordance with our national interests and the rule of law. South Africa does not have a policy of denying entry to people of Tibetan origin. I wish to reassure the Honorable Singh that the People's Republic of China respects bilateral and multilateral mechanisms available to that country to pursue matters of common national interest. It is common cause that the People's Republic of China does not interfere in the domestic affairs of our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy President. Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, and congratulations, Deputy President, on your appointment. Thank you for your response. One respects the diplomatic relations between South Africa and China. But when the Chinese embassy based in Pretoria issues statements, and I quote, that South Africa has, I quote, undermined the political trust between China and South Africa, close quote. They've also said that what South African government has done is it has run against the common interest of South Africa-China relationships and will undoubtedly discourage Chinese investors' confidence in South Africa, undermine South Africa's efforts for poverty reduction, and cause grave harm for the interest of South Africa and the South African people, close quotes. Now, understandably so, the South African government, as is reported, was furious that the Chinese embassy issued such statement. And I would like to know, in a similar vein that the Honorable Minister of International Relations issued a strongly worded statement against the Australian minister for talking about allowing white people to come into Australia, and that was the right thing to do, I believe. Did our government write to the Chinese embassy, to the Chinese government, and express concern at them making these kinds of statements because South Africa allowed a Tibetan to come into our country? And more so, Honorable Deputy President, we all know that this relates to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And we know he's been refused entry into this country when he was a political leader of the Tibetans in exile. It is reported that he is a spiritual leader now and no more holding the political role. will you consider supporting an application by His Holiness the Dalai Lama to visit South Africa in the interest of promoting social cohesion? Thank you.
Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you very much, Chair. With regards to the embassy here about the statements that were issued, probably we'll leave that to the Minister of International Relations to sort that one out so that they understand exactly what is the dissatisfaction. But the fact of the matter remains, as a country, we've got our own policy. All the bilaterals that we have with other countries, they've not sought to dictate how we handle our internal affairs. So probably they'll find out where is the discomfort around this matter. And I have said, Honorable Singh, that every application for a visa in this country would be regarded at that time of the application on the merits and demerits that will prevail at that time. So probably I cannot preempt any visa application of anyone to say whether we'll be considerate or not considerate at that time. Let's wait until the application is made, and those authorities will then determine, because factors are changing as you move. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. Honorable Hlengwa.
Honorable Deputy President, in the first question, you went to great detail speaking about human rights. And I think it's appropriate at this point in time to venture down that avenue of human rights. South Africans always stand on the side of those that are oppressed. But how is it that in this case, how do you juxtapose the one China policy to the collective aspirations of the Taiwanese people, the Tibetan people, who themselves are saying they want freedom, they want self-determination, and yet we close the door on them? How is it that we stand on the side of those that violate human rights? How is it that we stand on the side that oppresses people? Surely our interaction must not, with other countries, must not compromise our own national identity of upholding human rights. So how can Taiwanese people, Tibetan people, count on South Africa's support when we are succumbing to the pressures of Big Brother, in this case being China? When the Chinese president just yesterday said, if Taiwan wants to leave, they will bear the punishment of history. Is that the kind of people we want to work with?
Honorable Hlengwa, your time is up. Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Chair. I think that what we must appreciate and recognize is that when we are entering into bilaterals, we are not entering with individuals. We are entering with a government. A government. And we are trying very hard not to dictate to that government how to handle its own internal affairs. Right? We respect them. All countries have got their own internal problems, and we've got our own internal problems too. So we must deal with our own internal problems, not try and dictate what should happen in other countries. Can we allow the Chinese to deal with their own problem without imposing? But what we think will harm us, we must avoid. But if we have granted permission for someone to come to South Africa because we feel this person has got nothing, there's no danger in allowing this person, we don't want people to scream at us, because we have done our due diligence, and in terms of our policy, there's nothing that will prohibit us from granting this person a visa. But this person cannot be granted the same status that we've granted this person here in other countries. That is a sovereign matter that depends entirely on that country. So as countries, we must desist from this notion of trying to dictate to other countries what to do. It's not a good thing.
Thank you, Deputy President. Honorable Kellen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Deputy President, I find your inference that His Holiness the Dalai Lama is a danger to this country so ridiculous. You've mentioned, and I've listened carefully to you, that you'd like to leave this matter of China's threat to discourage disinvestment in this country to the Minister of International Relations. I submit, sir, that you are absolving yourself of a responsibility. This is a threat, and I would like to ask you, as the leader of government business, as the Deputy President, do you subscribe to such threats? Is this another form of state capture where you absolve your duty and allow a country, another country, because of their potential value, material value, to dictate to the foreign policy of this country?
Deputy President.
Well, I can ask the very same question to you. Why are you so insistent about this matter? What is your interest in that matter? What is your interest in that matter?
Order.
May I respond?
Honorable member.
It's a matter of human rights. Plain
Order.
and simple.
Honorable Kalyan, can we allow the Deputy President to conclude his response?
Let me answer my part.
Order. Honorable members.
Let me answer
Order. The Deputy President was answering a question. And order. Honorable Stander, can you please be in order? Proceed, Deputy President.
Well, let me answer my part. I'm not trying to absolve myself from anything. Standing here, I'm representing a country. I'm not representing myself. And I can't put my view, I'll put the view of a government of these people. Therefore, if I go and talk to other countries, I'll talk to them in my capacity as Deputy President of the Republic, and I represent the people of this country. Therefore, I'll be less inclined to interfere in other countries' domestic matters, because that's not my duty. My duty, there's no threat. There is no threat. There is no threat. And
Order.
I said, I am not going to say whether if the Dalai Lama's application for a visa will be denied or accepted. And I'm saying wait until he puts an application, and it will be determined at that time. At that time, we'll determine. We can't give a blanket approval for a person. No, you apply. At that time, we grant you or don't grant you, because I said circumstances changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy President. I am very fascinated by some of the comments I hear seated here. One of them is who elected who. I think all of us here have been elected in our capacities by the people of this country through our parties. And I think that closes the matter for those who were asking the questions that I had. Honorable Ketabashe. Order. I can appreciate that we are going for an election and filibustering is very much, in the air, but we are here for a question and answer session. Honorable Ketabashe.
Thank you, Chairperson. Deputy President, the status of the Department of Home Affairs, particularly the credibility of documents issued by the department, is placed in question by its minister, who has allowed himself to be used in a Gupta-led syndicate. It is a known fact that Mr. Gigaba enabled corruption in all government departments that he has led. And it is for this reason Home Affairs is in corruption.
House Chair.
What is the question?
House Chair, point of order.
Order, honorable member. What's the point of order?
I'm not even able to wait. The point of order, Chair, is that the honorable member is casting aspersions on the good person of the member of this House, and that he may go ahead and do it, but through a substantive motion. Otherwise, I suggest that she be not allowed. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. Honorable Dlamini, can you please take your seat?
Yeah, I'm raising on a point
Can you
of order.
please take your seat?
Can you recognize me?
Can you take your seat? I will recognize you, but take your seat. With respect to that matter, Honorable Ketabahle, indeed, I was going to come back to you because I think you said certain statements emphatically as though it's a fact. There's still processes to verify whether or not such issues are indeed facts. There are allegations, obviously, but I don't think we can work on allegations as though they've been tested as yet. So in respect of your statement, I would really say caution. You can raise a question directly to the president, to the deputy president, without inferring or casting aspersion on any other member. Can you please proceed? Honorable Dlamini, what's your point of order?
No, I want to appeal to you, Chairperson, that can the member be allowed to read the whole statement so that before you interact, because the things that she's talking about, they are there, they are factual. Even the court in Pretoria, they said Malus is a liar. So allow her to read the whole statement, then you can be able to engage.
Honorable Dlamini, can you please take your seat? I have spoken to the honorable member concerned, and I think the issues you are raising, as you very much know, there is an appeal on the case referred to. The Constitutional Court, what it said was it can't rule on this matter while the SCA still has a capability to deal with it. So I think at the moment we can have our allegations, our views, but I think let's just allow the honorable member, as I've indicated, that she must deal with the question, conclude without an inference or casting aspersion on anybody. Can you please proceed, honorable member?
Deputy President, shouldn't we build a strong and credible Department of Home Affairs free of corruption before we deal with China and champion a much more sustainable social cohesion campaign? And if the Deputy President agrees, will he also agree that it will be best if we start the process of building the credible and trusted Department of Home Affairs with the appointment of a minister who will not spend all his time attending?
Order, honorable member, your time is up. Can you take your seat? Your time is up, Deputy President.
Well, I think in the interest of all South Africans, as government, we must try and build very strong institutions. Home Affairs being one. All our institutions must be strong, and the public that we seek to serve must feel that these institutions are serving us. Now, that is our mission. That is why we're here. But in terms of these allegations, I think the chair has given us a direction on how to view this and how we should take it. But it is our intention, throughout all government departments, we must try, by all means, to avoid discrepancies. We must try and improve the service that we render to our people. Now, not specifically to Home Affairs, any department. That is the obligation we carry. But with the insinuations and whatever we are alleging, allow a process to take its course, and it will determine whether there's any wrongdoing or not. Time will tell. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we move to question 6, asked to the Deputy President by Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you very much. Honorable Member Sheikh, poverty and unemployment are a daily lived experience of the poor in our country. It is a matter of fact that those in poverty are, in the main, the black majority, especially youth and women. This is a reality we cannot shy away, but one that we must face and defeat. The deep scars of underdevelopment caused by apartheid in its deliberate design of socio-economic exclusion over many years cannot be left unchallenged. It must be confronted with greater urgency and focused intervention. Whereas we have made progress in fighting poverty and mitigating its devastating effect on our people through social security interventions, the reality is that the throngs of our youth remain on the margins of the economy as a result of high unemployment rate. The extent of poverty has declined somewhat, but its intensity for those in the lower bound poverty has increased. This, to our country, is a ticking time bomb that we have to confront and tackle with the utmost urgency. That is why the President pronounced that we will be implementing a radical socio-economic transformation program to effect these required changes for the upliftment of our people. At the heart of this transformation is to address the patterns of economic ownership and the means of production. Chief among this is land reform, which this House has debated and passed a resolution and agreed on an agenda for a constitutional process for land reform. It is not lost on us that we must implement this radical socio-economic transformation agenda within a constrained environment, which sometimes takes an antagonistic posture by our financial markets. We are mindful that these market forces may invariably seek to limit our space politically and may seek to limit our policy decisions that we can make as government. That is why we have opted for a constitutional reform route in order to implement this program in a well-structured approach, thereby bringing certainty on the path of reforms that we'll be undertaking to deal with land reform. The fact of the matter is that as a developmental state, we cannot afford to leave the project of transformation to the whims of the market. The state must actively participate as a driver for meaningful transformation. In this way, we can address the legacies of the past that created a thriving population in one hand while condemning the majority to the margins of economic activity. In implementing a program of social economic transformation that is radical, we are guided by the blueprint of a society that we want to build, as agreed to by our people, as expressed in the Freedom Charter. Therefore, land reform and transformation of economic patterns of ownership and production will continue to be implemented with much vigor. As to how fast we move, those of us elected as public representatives in this House must work hard and work with speed in passing the required legislation so that we open way for these land reforms to happen. We have to identify and agree on a set of strategic issues and tactical consideration facing our nation. There are areas of implementation in the immediate present that respond to the pressing challenges, which include strategic procurement from SMMEs and their payment on time to keep their cash flow in a positive state. For government, we must deepen the building of the capacity of the state as a driver for inclusive economic growth. We remain convinced that the state has a fundamental role in the economy through affirmative action aimed at inclusive economic participation to address deep socio-economic disparities and inequalities that is confronting our nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy President. Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Deputy President, when I heard the DA talk about oppression, I nearly fall flat on my back because they've oppressed us for decades. Deputy President, the financial institutions, the Reserve Bank, the retail chains, the food manufacturing industry, and the mineral wealth of this country, including the water and land, is in the hands of a few. Now, we cannot dispute that our land was stolen, but let us not forget the water was also stolen. Now, Deputy President, will this not impact the continued monopoly that is held by the few white monopoly capitalists? Will it not impact in any intervention by government in trying to radically transform South Africa? Thank you.
Deputy President.
Well, the term radical economic transformation, you should understand, stems out of a frustration that the majority of our people don't see progress. I'm sure our comrades sitting here wearing red, they are telling you about economic freedom, economic emancipation. This is the stress that our people are facing. That means we can no longer avoid these questions that are confronting us. We can no longer. If we want to survive as a nation, we can no longer protect the status quo. Land must be given back to the rightful owners. And land is a means to help people to survive. Now, let us take this journey. Let us take this journey, all of us. But we are going to heed to the call made by the President that we don't seek to push other people away. We don't seek to a reverse discrimination in this case. But for those who have acquired this land, they must be aware that it's time to release it. They must accept themselves. And we should find mechanisms that will be better for our country. I think all of us, we can share this land. Yesterday I was just thinking, you have a neighbor here who has got 31,000 hectares of land, and we've got someone here who does not even own a title, a small piece. It's unfair. It's unfair.
Order.
It's unfair. Therefore, we should not be scattered. The land issue will unveil new opportunities. It will unveil new opportunities for those who were secluded in the past. But land cannot just be given to people to go and sleep on the land. Land must be given to people who are going to work the land, who are going to produce. I think that should be the spirit. But as with all the programs that government has introduced to try and cushion our people who are in poverty, government has tried very hard. Our social security system has kept our people alive. But it's time to take our people from that system of being beggars, of receiving a social grant, to be actively participants. They must be active participants in their own economy. That we must achieve. And our fellow South Africans who are holding land, who are rich, let us share this richness for the sake of our country, for the stability of our country. Let other people that are poor, let's take it to be our responsibility, all of us, working together with government to pull those in poverty out of poverty. It should not. I think we must move away from casting aspersions all the time to say, no, white people stole our land, white people stole our land. Some were not part. Probably they are children, they are grandchildren of those who took the land. But they should find it necessary that this land must be shared by all who live in it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Steenhuisen.
When I heard the question from the Honorable Sheikh Imam, I nearly fell over on my back. It's like a walking job advertisement. Madam House Chair and Deputy President, I think there's not a party in this House that doesn't accept that we need meaningful land reform to redress the imbalance of land ownership in South Africa. However, Deputy President, given that on the 5th of July last year, the Minister of Tourism, the Honourable Hanekom, at the Agribusiness Africa Conference is quoted as saying, and I quote, "Expropriation without compensation is nonsense, and that it would do very serious damage to our economy and is seriously unjust," unquote. And that the high-level panel report identifies the key constraints on land reform is corruption, diversion of the funding into elite through elite capture, and a lack of political will over a decade by this ANC government, coupled with a rank inability to pass over title to previously disadvantaged South Africans. And so I ask you today, Deputy President, can you please inform this House what the exact impediments in Section 25 are to meaningful land reform?
Honourable Member, your time is up.
Well, I think we have not tested that section. We have not tested, but I'm happy about what the House has done to pass a resolution. That gives us an extra lever to deal with this matter so that we don't complain and say we are constrained by the Constitution. So, but all of us sitting here, we have got different definitions and different understanding, different views. You will have realized in the 54th conference of the ANC that not all delegates were agreeing to expropriation of land without compensation. But finally, a view prevailed over everything. So whatever Comrade Hanekom was saying, it was his personal view. But at the end of the day, he was bound by the resolution of the conference. So all of us are bound by that resolution, and it's a fact that land must be returned back to those who are landless. But the tools that we have at hand, this matter was debated by yourself here, and you felt, no, let's come close to the Constitution and open more gates for us to deal with this matter. and you passed that resolution. So I'm waiting for that commission to start. But I agree with you that probably the section in the Constitution, we have not explored it enough to see whether it's prohibitive to what we want to achieve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy President, and thank you for reminding us that all of us in that Constitutional Review Committee will have to do everything possible to test it. Honorable Cebekulu.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Honorable Deputy President, in respect of radical economic transformation and in ensuring food security to the nation, what is your view and position on government sponsorship of mechanization equipment and skills training to be provided for our citizens who currently reside in communal land with a view to ensuring continued sustainable farming practices and food security? Thank you.
Deputy President.
Thank you very much. I take it this is what is happening currently. All the departments of agriculture in the 9 provinces, they've got what is called farmer support. Farmers are given support through equipment, seeds, fertilizers, and everything, free. We might not have enough, and our approach is not targeted. That's where we need to improve, but also to ensure that the support is continuous by availing extension officers that will stay with the farmer to ensure that his or her crop is looked after until time of harvesting. Now, we can increase this support, but all what I'm trying to say, currently, this is what is happening. Well, before coming here, I was in Mpumalanga. Farmers there are supported through tractors, they are supported through fertilizers, seeds, and everything. But the missing link is that you give the support and pull back. You must give the support and continuously move with the farmer, support the farmer, educate the farmer, and then in that way, our interventions are going to be sustainable. So now that we are starting a new journey of saying we want this land back, we must be prepared that when we get this land, we are going to till it. And tilling that land, we are going to be supported by the state. Because as a country, we must have food, we must eat, and the surplus that we are going to produce, we are going to export it in order to get more and more income. Get our farmers to be commercial. But firstly, it is important to satisfy our domestic need before we can export our food. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Filtane. Ngiyabona uyathokoza mhlonishwa uHlengo ukuthi uphendule kahle undaba ezitha. Ngiyabonga nami. Babu Filtane.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Deputy President, given that the Department of Agriculture has got a very lean budget, and given the fact that, therefore, its support to farmers can only be equivalent to what one would call isolated showers, what steps is government going to take to meet the desired time frames, especially with regard to productive use of the land? The key word in this question is time frames. That's where I want you to be specific in your response. When is this going to happen? That budget is very low, what you're relying on to improve the lot of the farmers. Thank you.
I can know kumhlonishwa sayidlulile nje budget. Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you very much. I see a shift. I see a shift in our thinking by the very nature of the issues that we're debating here. the very nature of the land question. By debating the land question, you are saying as South Africans, let's go back and till the land. Therefore, it means we are going to put more of our energy and more of our resources to make use of our land, because this tells me that sitting here, you have identified agriculture as a very important sector that can uplift the economy. So that identification should go with the resources that we put in that department. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy President. That concludes questions to the Deputy President. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair.
But that doesn't conclude the House yet. It just concludes the questions. Deputy President, you can take your seat.
Thank you very much.
The next item on the order paper is a motion that is in the name of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party. Honorable Chief Whip.
Thank you, Slalo. House Chair, we move that this House, in terms of Rule 36, read with Item 7 of Appendix A to the rules, and notwithstanding any provision to the contrary, grants Mrs. S.J. Nkomo, MP, and Ms. N.W. Matikizela Mandela, MP, leave of absence from the House due to ill health until 30th March 2018 and 3 December 2018, respectively. I so move, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. I now put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. Now, the business of this House has been concluded. The House adjourns.